How's everybody doing today? Thank you all for being here on time, and we're going to get started with our icebreaker of the day. Today's icebreaker is related to some of what we're doing, and well, do we have any housekeeping, Kat, that you want me to introduce?
All good.
All right. So today's icebreaker is in a short time. Please share with us your favorite fictional character and also explain why they're your favorite, and popcorn to another participant. And I'm having a very hard time thinking of one. So anybody want to start?
I'll go first because I have spent 5 minutes thinking and I just came up with one.
All right.
So, one of my favorite fictional characters is Cartman from South Park. And just for just very amateurish reasons, I just think he's hysterical. And yeah, it's always good for a good laugh. I'll pass to Kat. Catherine with an I, not the writing for Green Cat.
I've only had 30 seconds to think about this. So, I really like this. I have no idea why this even came to mind in 30 seconds, but there was I don't know if you guys read the Redwall books, but there was it was about anyway, it was like fantasy books from back in the day, and Muriel was the name of a very adventurous warrior mouse, I guess, from those books. I don't really have reasoning, but that's my answer.
All right.
I will popcorn to Dave Barthony, Bethany.
Thank you. Um, I guess I like characters that have like two sides. So I can be very generic and be like Darth Vader, but like people like that are kind of like they were good, but they're not anymore, but they kind of are. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll go to Alfredo.
Uh, well, um, I first thought of Captain Planet, maybe, for obvious reasons. From childhood, seeing those characters and getting to know the importance of environmental conservation, how to put it into the characters is great. All popcorn to Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Favorite fictional character is the Paper Bag Princess, which maybe you're not as familiar with toddler reading material, but it was my favorite book when I was a kid. And I'm happy to say that my kid now loves it. And, as you might imagine, the Paper Bag Princess wears a paper bag because she loses all of her clothes in a fire and then she saves herself. And then she tells the prince to get lost. So, and it's a great Halloween costume. It's very easy to make. Katie, go ahead.
Oops. Where's my menu? So I was sitting here thinking, oh, I know who I'm going to say. I'm going to say Erin Brockovich because I love that movie and I love that character, but she's not fictional. I just realized. So
you can say her. It's fine. That's fine.
I just love her. I love her transformation in that movie. I love everything she does and everything she stands for.
Yeah.
And then I'll popcorn to how about to Nicole?
Well, I was hoping you weren't going to pick me. I'm going to need some more time to think about this. Yeah.
Okay, I'll
I
jump
meant to
in.
say Tracy.
Yeah.
Okay, Katie. I would say Eeyore because I can relate to his personal struggles. And I will popcorn to, can I go to you now, Nicole?
Oh man,
Are you ready?
I'm at a total loss here. I read a lot too, which is kind of weird that I don't have a thing here.
You want me to go to Kat?
Yeah, maybe.
Kat.
I should have known. Um, the first person that came to mind for me was Princess Fiona from Shrek. I really like her. Defies stereotypes pretty unapologetically herself. I really grew up admiring her and wanting to find my Shrek good love me for me.
Awesome.
We can be growth together. Sam, did you have one in mind?
I do. Although Sarah helped me think of both what she said in terms of toddler books and having a cat. There's another toddler book that's called Mr. Putter and his cat, Tabby. And I like him because he's getting old and crotchety and tottering, and that feels like where I'm at. But I also love stories like Shawshank Redemption, where people maintain their freedom in spite of being somehow oppressed. I mean, is the simple way to say it. And they then, maintain that freedom in spite of those circumstances. And I think that's an important thing. So I love that as well. Okay, now Nicole, time to
Yeah,
step up.
shit or get off the pot. I am watching Game of Thrones right now. So I don't know if she's totally fictional either, but Lagatha is a pretty badass lady who kind of is like a Viking warrior, shield maiden that right now what's happening in the story is she's decided to like retire from public life when her son is ruling, and basically this group of women that she's living with were like attacked by these people, and she had previously like buried her sword and sworn to the gods that she was never going to fight again, and now she's pissed, and I just cannot wait for how she is going to protect these other ladies that she's living with.
All right. There you go. And Margaret, are you there?
Oh, she is going to be here in a few minutes. I think she's not here.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, great. All right. So today, we do have a lot to cover, but I think it's going to be a fun lesson today. But before we get there, we wanted to kind of go back to yesterday again. See if you have any, there's kind of two things, key takeaways or questions from the outcomes session, as well as just if you want to share an outcome that you've come up with and get feedback on it and tell us what you're thinking about it. We'd love to hear that as well. So let's just let you all jump in with what you're thinking about regarding yesterday's lesson.
I guess
I'll
I
s-
have a oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, I guess I have a question about all these terms, and is this sort of the language of grant writing? Like these are terms that, output, outcome. I hear deliverables. I hear lots of different terms. So I guess I'm curious as to, um, is this kind of the language that we want to take into our proposals?
So yeah, thank you. And Aaron's been really trying to get us to be very consistent with our language because of this. Um, so the logic model phraseology, the tops of those four columns are very standard inputs, resources on the left, activities, outputs, and then outcomes. Those are very standard evaluation terms and logic model terms. So that's pretty ubiquitous. And the term needs statement is pretty much what every grant will call it. Yeah. And the problem statement, which we're using, or describe your problem, but the problem statement is what many logic models will have as their summary of the problem to be addressed. So we're trying to be consistent with that. And your problem statement should relate to your need statement. It should basically be a sentence synopsis of it, so that it just tells people what's happening. So generally, yes, but it's kind of like strategic planning. And we had this conversation yesterday. Strategic planning, I've heard about 7 different definitions for what different strategic planners call strategies, and objectives and goals and all of those things can be very different. So we're going to establish our definitions for those things come in the next few weeks. And if you need to think of it as a different term because that's the way you've always thought of it, that's fine. And that's just a little bit of a translation piece. Does that all make sense, Katie? All right. Anybody else? Somebody else was jumping in.
Because that was me. I think what I took away is kind of like the context matters and it can be kind of gray and what your ultimate goal is or what your activities are can change things, outputs or outcomes in long term and short term. So it's not just like when we took that self-directed course and kind of the handout too, it makes it seem like it's kind of clear cut, but I kind of took away that it's not.
Yeah, I think it's called the logic model because it just has to make logical sense to who you're trying to get engaged in your project, right? And it should make logical sense to you, right? And that's why I used that other children's book yesterday. If you give a mouse a cookie, it should make sense of what you're trying to do and that you can communicate that. The other thing I wanted to just reassure you of is that most nonprofits don't go through this process, right? And yet foundations often will ask for a logic model, or they'll at least reference some of the terms. And what people do is they start out with what they think they need and what they plan to do, and then they'll just have to fill the logic model in just to make it part of their story. And we're trying to do the opposite, have your story, and then just be able to write your grant because you already have it. So that's an important thing. And the fact that most places don't do it also brings up a point that I wanted to make and to reassure you. There's two phrases I've heard: perfect can be the enemy. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I always say B plus is still the honor roll, which means you don't have to make this A plus work. You know, the fact that you're doing it means that you're already far ahead of most folks and setting it in your head. Aaron?
Just and to add to that and kind of build on what Dave's observation, that we make it seem so clear and straightforward. Your logic model, when you're done, it's kind of like making sausage. It's gonna look great when you're done with a string. You're gonna have a great logic model, but it starts off as a big sloppy mess. It's really hard to make something clear and organized out of a whole bunch of random information that you have to somehow collate and distill. And that's the really hard thing about planning and communication, which we're working on. So you're going to end up there, but it's not going to happen super fast necessarily, especially because your problems are complex.
Right. Nicole?
Just my reflections of yesterday's lesson when Sarah and I were working together. You know, I had taken basically like the 10 bullet points of the problem statement, like different problem statements that we had come up with, and we just sort of like reverse them in order to make them the long-term and short-term outcomes, which I think was the opposite. A lot of people said it was really hard yesterday, but I think we both were like, okay, we're good, and like had a lot of time afterwards waiting because the reverse of the problem is the solution. And so that was just a really interesting observation that I think made it a little bit easier for me, and maybe other people could consider to use the same strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagining the world as you want it to be. And then maybe the different levels of that. Like what? Margaret?
Um, so as I was going through the self-directed and thinking about words and phrases that I was struggling with yesterday, I wonder about how much of this work should be done with colleagues or with, partners. And it seems like there would be an advantage to doing that, but how do you keep it a thinking exercise and not a writing exercise, because when you get people together, then you sort of fall into the safe space of writing and editing and wordsmithing, and that gets you further from just actually identifying the key points that you need.
Yeah. So I had a mentor who came up with an equation, which was the power of a decision, PD or P equals the merit, its objective merit times the number of people who support it. So in other words, if you have 25 people who believe in an idea that's only 25% as good as your idea, you still will come up with a much more powerful decision because you have a lot of people working on it with you and supporting it.
Can you
And
say
so
that again?
the power of a decision equals its relative objective merit times the number of people who support it.
Okay. Thank you.
And so the point about this is you're designing these programs, which probably need a lot of people. So including some in the design is important. And I often find as a leader, you should maybe create the target to keep things a little bit more concise and you don't end up in 7 years of planning and doing that. So maybe you come up with the target and then you figure out some discussions about how you can get insight from others. But I do think involving others at these elemental and fundamental points can be a good idea.
Just to add to that, I'm working with an organization on this right now, and what has come out is that trying to meet folks where they are in the planning and development process, where there's some folks who are focused on wordsmithing and working with the content of the logic model and what they ultimately wanted to say, whereas the wider team and the stakeholders are participating in exercises that are simply now what and why now. And it's just them doing post-its on a board and discussing these points. And then there's specific team members who are synthesizing all that feedback and take into several key points. And so it's just simply like now what is what they want to see in the future that's come from their programs after doing a reflection. And that is their exercise for updating their theory of change, strategic plan, and their logic model. And I found really effective because it's not people focusing on polishing and having a perfect statement. It's just getting ideas out there, and then they can categorize that as a team and then have, the executive director and another individual working to build that into a logic model.
Yeah. And by the way, if you think, well, how do I get the facilitator? Because that can be a facilitator and that costs a lot of money and all of that. As a director of a small foundation, I used to always go to the local universities and have the appropriate classes who need to do their practicums help me design and implement those kinds of things. And that's a way you can afford it. And you're doing a service to those students. And so these are all ideas that, again, you can help work through in coaching. Okay, other reflections. These are great. Thank you. All right. And one last chance. I'm going to do the trick that you wait 7 seconds. I forgot to do that. Okay, so with that, let's move on to today's objectives, just so we have it. And so we're going to talk about evidence, and this might be second hat to some of you, and the different types of things that you can use to document your problem or your statement of need. And again, problem statement is the summary. Statement of need is what a grant will require. And incorporating that evidence into a proposal or a need statement, including some citations, and then just think about the different sources, reputable sources of information, and also thinking about how you can find information when you don't think that there is, the studies are there or whatever. So we're going to try to help you think about those things. And then the other thing we're going to do in that second bullet is we're going to give you time to start organizing your own statement of needs. So again, we're trying to be practical and help you write grants. And so we want, we're going to actually start diving into the statement of need. Let's go to the next slide really quickly. Again, we're going to go back to the logic model, and what, Aaron and I were talking today, and here's what we want to have done, at least in a B plus, still the honor roll fashion by next Monday, is we want you to have a problem statement. We want you to have a list of outcomes that you think are resonating with you. And we also want you to write your statement of need, which we will be working on today. And that is not on here, but again, the statement of need is what you end up writing in your grant proposal. So we'd like to have that settled because that really is kind of a foundation for thinking about the rest of the logic model. And it doesn't necessarily change a ton based on what activities or what program you're writing for, because if you're thinking about the bigger problem, most things will fit into that. So that's where we're heading, because we want by the end of this course for you to have a logic model that is really solid and to really have, as Aaron keeps on promising, your grant writing will become so much easier. And as we go through this, we're going to develop the different tools and different sections of a grant. Does that make sense? So, and on Monday, we're going to give you time to, ask more questions about all of this. All right, so today's agenda is we're going to do some discussions and group exercises around types of evidence and citations, just so you know how to incorporate those and get those for your proposal. We're going to begin to draft your statement of need or organize it, so you kind of have some ideas about what the rest of the week will look like when you can set some time to this. And we're just going to, at the end, be able to share what you're doing and ask each other questions around it, just to give you more clarity on the statement of need. Make sense? Any questions so far? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to think for a second or 30 seconds about a person who you really trust, right? And think about why you trust them. So just take a minute to think about somebody in your life or somebody, public figure or whatever, who you really trust. And you can either do this if you want when you got it. People, everybody have somebody? Yeah? Okay, good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up a whiteboard, and you are going to take about 2 minutes to basically write down notes about what are the characteristics or things that earn that trust. What makes that person trustworthy to you? What are the characteristics or qualities of that person? And if you could just start typing this in on your notes. Does everybody remember how to do notes on these things? Uh-oh. All right, so I just was talking and had myself muted. Now we're going to do the opposite exercise. We're going to think about somebody who we don't trust in our lives, and Kat's going to move this whiteboard over, and we're going to think about somebody you don't trust and start putting sticky notes around the characteristics of this untrustworthy person.
Quick process piece, or maybe more fundamental. If I stop following Kat, will that make the screen not bounce around to somebody else?
That's just what I had to
Yeah.
do.
Please don't follow me. Yeah, do not follow
Because
me.
if you follow Kat, you'll keep on getting dragged over, and she's doing some side work to organize
Exactly.
things.
I'm like, well, wait a minute.
I was like, what's going on? I was the same way.
Oh,
I'm supposed to,
All
okay.
right, stop following you. Oh, but it's not. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Whew.
I know. Wrestling for control. That's part of the untrustworthiness. Okay. So let's go back to the trustworthy part and look at them quickly. Can we all go back to that section? And I'm wondering if anybody, take a couple seconds to look at all the different characteristics and see if anybody would be willing to volunteer to synthesize some of what you're seeing here. Or even if you don't want to do more than one, just jump in with characteristics that you think are shared.
I don't think I was the only one who was thinking about the president.
Say that
For the
again.
untrustworthy. For the untrustworthy, I don't think I was the only person who was thinking about the
Yeah.
If we go back
So-
to trustworthy, I think like Kat organizes these kind of with themes, but in like the top left, there's a couple that say like experience, years of experience. So when somebody has a cumulative time of something, I think it's easier to trust somebody that's been working on an issue for 30 years than 3 months.
Right. Great. Anything else?
I just keep noticing, and I know I've said that context matters in like every one of these lessons, but I think that context also matters here. Because there's certain people that I trust their opinion or their perspective on with something, but absolutely not with something else. And I also think that when you're trying to use somebody else's work or evidence to support your own project or theory or argument or whatever, who you choose really matters on your audience to your audience. And so much of this is socially irrelevant. Like the fact is, as human beings, I'm going to relate to white women a lot more than I relate to anybody else, and that's partially social, the way we're socialized, and it's partly just like humanity. So I think there's like a fine line of wanting to overcome all of that garbage that we're saddled with, but also to play into what it is that's going to convince your audience and keep their attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, but thank you. That is entirely true. So I think I heard you say a couple of things there. One is context matters. Where are you trusting a person in doing what, right? You wouldn't necessarily trust your auto mechanic to clean your teeth. But also that we have to take into account our audience for better or for worse, right? And who are they and how are they socialized and and what are they thinking and be able to accept that and maybe speak to them. Anything else on the trustworthy piece? So we have experience, we have context, and we have know your audience. Anything else?
Following through seems to be, keeping your word
Yeah.
along
And
those lines.
experience of
Consistent,
following through.
reliable.
Yeah. Reliability. right?
I really
Anything else?
appreciate I really appreciate whoever wrote that honesty doesn't mean they always need to have the answers. Because I think both as a human being, I wrote like the capacity for repair to come back after some sort of conflict and like work through it. But from a sourcing standpoint as well, like the scientific community can be wrong about things. That's a real thing that happens. And part of what makes it generative and growth based is peer review and coming back and saying, hey, we misunderstood this. Here's a new way of seeing that. So I think that's true for people and, like finding credible sourcing as well.
Yeah,
And
I
I
was
would
gonna say, oh, I was
go
gonna
ahead,
say
Nick.
like accountability and like fallibility and admitting when you're wrong often builds trust for me more than somebody who seems confident that they know everything.
Totally. Totally.
And I'm just going to say that that is some of the, if you have that type of relationship with a funding source and you have your plan and you say your plan and then you say, this was our plan, we tried it, didn't work, this is where we're shifting to because of this, this, and this, that is a huge credibility builder with a funder. You are not going to get a funder that just walks away from you because of that, right? So that builds in the funding world as well. All right, let's go back to the other side, to the untrustworthy. I keep on waiting for it to move since I was following Kat earlier, but now I have to do it myself. And what are we seeing on this side of things?
Motivations, I think, like if you can read someone's motivation and they're self-interested, I see a couple notes that refer to that.
Yeah. Any other ones?
Couple are like these people think they're very self-important, more important than anybody else.
Mhm.
There was one about like making shit up, can't support statement with facts. What they say directly contradicts proven facts. So I think
Yeah,
like you don't trust people that are lying, essentially,
right.
which seems like to be the definition of truth or trust, but
I think it's also interesting, like Sarah was talking about context and how, you might have somebody who's well intended, but if they're inconsistent, unreliable, you don't trust them. And it's not necessarily that they're a bad person. It's just that they're not, you just can't depend on them to do something. So I feel
Right.
like untrustworthy doesn't, it always has a negative connotation, but sometimes it's just about like capacity to do something or an inability to follow, to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and for me, the concept of sort of like flash in the pan. They show up, they're there, but then they're not. And it's almost like a dependability piece, but it's a really quick moment with them and it doesn't help or inform in the long run. It's just sort of a flash and gone, which is
But those
Right.
people are great for brainstorming sessions. It's like those people are great too. They're just not the ones that you want on, you know,
Yeah. And I
on the
think
board every day.
you're bringing up important points here, which are A, who do you trust for what, right? Which is one thing. And then B, it doesn't, you can have people who are great people, they're on your team, you love them for certain things or whatever, but understanding their different skill sets in certain areas and being clear about that is important. It's not, as Dave talked about in his favorite fictional character, it's not about being one way or the other. We all carry our strengths and weaknesses and all of those things. And however, we want people, as leaders, we want people to feel as though when you say something, you're going to be trusted that you're not doing these things here. So let's move on from this. Obviously, I think you've gotten to it a little bit, but why are we talking about this, right? What are the reasons that we're bringing this up?
Resources or sources of information, citability. Some we want to parrot language or provide language that is trustworthy, is something that others see value in and can stand the test of time and support our proposal all the way from idea to implementation.
Right. And so how do we build trust in that way? What are, and are we into the next piece? I think the next slide, but what are the different ways you can build trust as you begin to write, making sure that our writing and what we say and write are authoritative and authentic? What are the ways that you can do that in your writing? And so you just mentioned citing evidence and having good citations. What else?
I want to add one other thing to that, Sam, like the big picture is you're trying to build trust with whoever is reading your work or whoever is collaborating with you on planning something, because you want them to see you as credible. So your objective in what you write and how you communicate verbally and in writing is to build credibility. And that's kind of the big picture of why we're talking about this.
Correct. Thank you. So what are the things that you can do as you begin to write? Because, anybody who tells you that foundation work and grant writing is not relationship building is lying. There's still a lot of relationship building in it. And yet, one of the big differences is you can blindly go into a foundation and potentially get money, right? Without knowing who they are. And so we want to make sure that what you write does this and how you present does this. So what are the ways that you can build that credibility? What are the different things? So you're citing evidence. What else?
You can point to past successes
Great. Yeah.
or achievements.
Good. What else?
Offer realistic expectations and goals. Don't go in sounding like you're going to solve all the world's problems.
Amen. Good. Perfect.
I would say get like a third party kind of testimonial or something. So I believe what other people that I trust believe. So it's kind of like transitive trust or whatever, but external validation.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Be transparent and open with where you are in the process, what your challenges are, what your needs are.
Agreed. Yeah.
Incorporate that.
What else? Anything else?
I think similar to that, like budget wise, like your ask is realistic. It matches what you're saying your need is to some degree.
Yeah. And this is my favorite topic, Dave. I think I mentioned that in our first session. And by doing what we're doing and moving from right to left, your budgets are going to be easy to create as opposed to, oh God, now I have to create, and you make a bunch of stuff up. So yeah, I think that is really, really important. Anything else? I'll give you a hint, something from one of your earlier lessons, a topic of one of your earlier lessons.
Like you have clear outcomes.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, good logic model. I was thinking the story. You can tell a story. As scientific as anything might be to tell what the need is, telling a story about a person or a thing or a place can touch the heartstrings. All right. So all of these things can be part of your grant proposal, need to be part of your grant proposal, and thought about well before your grant proposal. We want you to basically be able to tell one story, maybe with different chapters, but it's still one story, and that you're not making up different stories depending on who the funder is. One of the things that's stated right up front there is citing evidence and sources and getting good information that you can use to build your case. And so we just want to go in and talk about the different types of evidence that there are in writing papers, right? And here's a bunch of them. And one of the things that we're very well aware of, and that actually a couple of you referenced, is we used to talk about this in a way of, oh, this is better evidence or that is better evidence. But the reality is evidence and data has been another resource that has been kept in one place and not necessarily given to others. And so there's a lot of we want you to build a picture that is comprehensive. And so here's a bunch of different ways. So meta-analysis, I'm not even sure what meta-analysis is. Aaron, help me out there. Sorry.
Like a review of the reviews. It's like,
oh, okay, yeah. So if you go to NIH, NIH will a lot of groups like NOAA and NIH will do the work of researching all the different control trials and other things and see about what it's stating. Randomized control trials, we all know what those are, or no? Anybody give me a quick definition or description?
Those are almost always health outcome related. You have two groups and you don't get to choose which group you're in. And then one group gets the treatment and one group does not.
Right.
They're considered like the gold standard of public health research.
Right. And that's the thing that generally we won't have access to. And frankly, your outcomes might state as if that's where we're headed to, but that's what we were talking about yesterday, to say that's okay. You can draw the inferences without actually having proof that your thing did it. Websites, there's articles, right? National Geographic or health journals or scientific journals, or the people, all these industry groups are doing their own articles and own research on certain things. White papers and reports, and then importantly, internal program data and anecdotes. And that's where a lot of folks don't ever really get serious and structured about the way you're tracking your own data. But when you do, it can be a very powerful tool to use. And anecdotes, again, then you tell a story about the data that you've just shared. Does that, everybody clear on these things? All right.
one of the reasons that we don't, when we do this workshop, we don't present one type of data as necessarily better than others, is because there's a lot of inequities that are baked into all this. Some things that came up the other day is that in a lot of instances, native populations are not involved in the scientific research that is being used to justify taking the lands away or closing the fisheries or opening the fisheries or whatever. So you may not have access to randomized controlled trials or trials or scientific studies all the time. If you do, that's great, but stories and information from your own organization and data like that can be used very effectively to tell your story and convince people.
Correct. And let's just go on to the next piece, which is, if you don't have traditionally credible sources to support your claims, what alternatives exist? And Aaron just mentioned one, internal program data. stories from your own work. What else?
Modeling, maybe like projected outcomes, projected modeling. I'm thinking more science-based, but
Yeah.
This is
Would
maybe
Kate,
not the answer you were looking for, Sam, but if you don't know that, if you don't have any way to demonstrate that you have a problem, is that what you should be focusing on?
That's a good question. And I was just thinking as we were talking, we talked earlier about going to a university to potentially have them help you create data because universities are all about research, and maybe you have a great research project, or you can write a capacity building grant to further study the problem and its root causes, right? And so to collect that data. So that is a potential that you can make that the focus of your grant proposal.
How about case studies? Is that
Yeah,
appropriate for this one?
of course. Yeah. And you could also maybe find, which is related to this, find a research project that's in a similar community, right? And you can draw, which is a case study, which, you draw analogies and inferences based on that. Both in determining the problem as well as the solution, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say in that vein, oftentimes there might be a problem that you're working on in your community that an organization in a different region, or an entity in a different region is working on the same problem, but maybe in a different geographic area. And they might have done some research or outreach or projects that you can coordinate with and use their model or their strategy and their outcomes as an evidence or baseline to show how it could affect and impact your community.
Yeah. So the point is, you are all working on problems that exist, right? So, and your job is to make the best case possible, and to do the homework to find the research that you can use, to find the stories, and do the best job of incorporating these and all those other things that were in the previous slide to describe that problem. And where you can't find it, you need to be creative in some way. And in some cases, as Nicole suggested, maybe that's where you need to start. Maybe that's your first activity and the first output and the first outcome, right? Is to gain a better understanding of the problem, get a scientific basis on which to act in the future to solve this problem. So we're going to just go on to one thing really quickly before we move on to kind of getting you into smaller groups and getting you out of this big group. And that is citing sources. And this is the bane of my existence, especially since I used to have to do it with typewriter back in the day. Who had to ever write papers on typewriters in college? There we go. Got a couple of us. Okay, 3 of us. That was terrible. Anyway, so we're on. We need to cite. Part of creating credibility is not just making claims that can't be cited, right? And so you do need to cite things in your papers, in your proposals when you have the research, and there's different ways to do so. And the next slide will show us that. There's inline. Could we show that, Kat, when you get a chance? And really, inline citations in many ways are the best for grant proposals as long as it's easily findable, right? So I think the one we have here is US Census. If it's something from the US Census, you can just kind of write the US Census. And There's also the second one, Barrett et al. 2021. And part of the reason these are good is because nobody's ever going to go to in general, to these citations, and citations take up space, and you sometimes are limited to the number of attachments, and you can't, taking up all these superscript citations are space eaters. I have found that AI is not terribly great at helping me write my grants, in case you are thinking about trying. But I have found that if I have the correct URLs and things like that, it will help me with my citations pretty well. It'll ask you what type. And so just the idea is part of the credibility building is showing people that you have done some research. All right. Okay. So that's part of all saying that your fundraising efforts are going to be a relational thing. Nothing will take the place of the experience you get over years of showing that you're a reliable person who follows through and is vulnerable when you need to be and is accountable when you need to be. And in order to get that time and get into the relationship with the funder, there are things you can do in both your planning and your writing that will immediately say, oh, I'm interested in this. And you have definitely listed a lot of those things, whether it's the budget, the plan, the outcomes. If those are all tied together in a really logical, neat bow, you are competing better than most people. And it's very obvious to those of us who read your grants. Just going to say it. It's extremely obvious. So that's why we're going through this so painstakingly. So now we're going to move on to a section of a grant, right? Everybody has had experience. Who has not had experience with statement of need before in a grant proposal? No, not Nicole. Okay, good. So we're going to go over it. And basically it is all the things we've just been talking about. But let's go into the next piece, which is discussing what a statement of need, the elements of a statement of need. Can anybody for Nicole tell her what a statement of need is generally when you get to a grant proposal?
I'll take a stab at it. It provides some context for the problem. It expands upon that a little bit, and it also doesn't really expand upon, but it hints to or introduces a potential solution that we want to pursue, or we think we should pursue.
Yeah, good. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
How about your organization's equipped to solve it?
That's going to be more likely in the organizational capacity part of the grant. But yes, you probably will hint at that. But what a statement of need does two things. First of all, you're applying to a funder who has talked to you about their interests, and you've somehow said, oh, that aligns with what we're doing. So you are demonstrating to them that you understand the problem they're trying to solve, and that you're describing how it's affecting your community, and also getting them to go to basically say, holy crap, that's right, I have to do something about that. That's what you're doing in a statement of need, right? You're piquing their interest. And since they already have an interest in this topic, presumably, you are getting them to go, yeah, that's right. Oh man, that's what we're here for. That's what we want to solve. And you're showing them that you know the problem in your context. Make sense? So let's go to the next slide. Kat, I think it's the description of the statement of need or the elements. So in a statement of need, these are the types of things that they are looking for. Details about the demographics served, and that demographic in terms of, it can be sea life and those kinds of things. It can be the oyster farmers, the different oyster farmers. It can be the wildlife. It can be the flora or the fauna, any of that. What the problem is, a problem for which meaningful impact is possible. A brief, as was stated, brief connection to the solution, including maybe your role in it. Data points, if you have them, that can be substantiated. And you can include a story or an anecdote. And these will generally be aligned with points. Like often grants will say, your statement of need is worth 20 out of 100 points. So if you have a page limit, you can think about it in that framework. Or it will just give you 500 words or less or something like that. But definitely worry about being concise, but that's what it has. And just the next slide, I just happened to be looking at a RFP, request for proposals today. And here's what they say: purpose, describe the scope of the need for your service, present facts and anecdotes that support the needs for a project or program, answer the need statement questions, which are all of those things we just talked about, demographics and blah, 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 and be specific about the problem and need. So pretty much every grant you write is going to have this. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have you begin by working on your own statement of need. So we do have let's tell you the tools we have. So the first thing is, we know some of you might be ready to start writing, and we know that others of you are going to be like, holy cow, I haven't even heard of this. How do I organize myself? All of those things are okay. We also know that some people like to write and some people like to do outlines. So this is your time to integrate kind of what you're learning and to kind of organize your statement of need in the way that's best for you. As I said, we want you to kind of get yourself started so that in the rest of this week and up through Monday, you can really start writing a 2 to 3 paragraph solid statement of need for your problem. We do have some tools to use. Number one, we can I'll post those, the elements of a statement of need in the chat. And then we also have this document here, which we can post the link to. It has a bunch of different tools in terms of different places you can find data. We also have another one which shows you, were you able to pull that together, Aaron? Are they all in one document, the exercise 4?
Yeah, I didn't do the second thing we talked about, but
okay. But there is if you can pull up the one that is the what's it called? Lesson 4, handout 4, sample info. Is that it? No, it's here, let me do it. There's also a that's it, yeah. There's also a document that we pulled together that allows us that, we originally were going to have you write a sample statement from some of these pieces of information we pulled from different sources. But we really want you to work on your stuff. And that was feedback that we want to incorporate, that we want you to be able to write your grant. But you can open this document up, and we'll put this in the link to this as well, just to see the types of statements and citations that might go into a statement of need. So does this all making sense to people, what we're asking you to do? Anybody confused? I'm feeling like I'm confusing you.
I'm confused. I'll admit it.
Okay, good. So we want you to start working on drafting your statement of need. So in general, we're hoping that by next week, you are really great. You have a statement of need that you can cut and paste into most grants, some version of it. And then you also have your outcomes done, and at least drafts of them done, so that you have the beginnings of your evaluation plan and all of that. So we want you to write this statement of need this week, and we want you to use the next half hour to just kind of organize yourself around your problem and expanding upon, why is this a problem? What would you, in order to tell your story about the statement about why this is needed, what information do you need? What research do you need to do? Or maybe you have it and you can just start writing some of it. What story might you incorporate, and that you need to go to Jenny over in communications to grab it because she has it, or whatever. Does that make better sense, Katie, or no?
Yeah, well, I'm again like struggling to manage all the like documents and resources with it. And then I was wondering, is there like there is a sample statement of need, just so I can see like structurally what it looks like?
Well, we have one in one of the past exercises that we had written for a parent's education program that I can find and put in.
Okay. I can probably get to it if you tell me which. That's in the L04.
Lesson
4. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I'll go
And
back and
that's a
review.
brief one, but it's the idea of incorporating the statistics around around some of the educational outcomes and for people in Hoboken compared to the neighboring community, or statistics around how parent participation is linked to higher graduation rates, right? And so the effort there is not to say that therefore we're going to directly impact higher graduation rates, but if you can impact parent participation, you have a study backing up that will lead to higher graduation rates, or should, and that it creates a causal relationship. So what we want to do, and we're going to do two things. In a second, we're going to ask who wants to be paired with somebody and who wants to work alone in your own breakout group. And then the three of us will give you a few minutes and then jump into your rooms and just see what other questions you have in terms of getting started.
I just want to add, I added a link to an example statement of need in the chat if you'd like it for reference.
What do you envision for working with a partner during this? Is it just sort of bouncing ideas around, or sitting and writing and then saying, okay, I'm stuck? Or, I mean, what is that kind of what
any
you're
of
thinking?
that? Yeah, any of that.
Okay.
We're just trying to accommodate your learning styles, and
Mhm.
some of us, I think more what you just said, like writing, hey, could you help me with this? Or maybe you need to start with a conversation. But it's just kind of having somebody right there to bounce ideas off of, versus, you know what, I just want to use this half hour for myself.
Okay, so in a paired situation, it's okay to sort of say, let's talk for 5 minutes and then kind of check in with each other. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So spoiler alert, that's what I would try to do if someone wanted to pair with me.
So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna ask for those folks who want to work alone and to raise your hand using the chat, the React button, and Kat will put you in a room just so it's a separate space, and then we'll check in with you. It allows us as facilitators to check in at one point, and then those who are left will just pair up in other rooms. Does that make sense? So use the React button to raise your hand if you want to work in your own room to begin to develop your statement of need. And Kat will put you into your room. So I'm seeing Sarah, Bailey, Alfredo, David want to work independently, correct?
And could you also tell us where we're supposed to put this? piece of.
Oh yeah, there's you have the ability to begin working on this in your learning module, right?
You can use your Google Working Doc if that's easily accessible to you, or just do it in a Word doc or whatever somewhere. We're not worried about where it is really. Just focus on the work.
Yeah. And Kat, can you put those folks into their room and then we'll split the others, or how do you want to do it? Ah. So are you gonna?
Kat's doing it, Sam.
I see. Yep. But I see one room for the people that want to be alone.
Yes, that's what you had said. You were going to put them
No,
separately.
each of those 4 people should be in their own room.
Oh, okay.
Can you do that?
I can try. I just assumed they just wouldn't talk to each other.
No, they said they wanted to be alone.
Right. Mm,
Sorry.
I
So
don't
you
know.
can
Bailey's going to get the founder of North Face to host a retreat for donors in Argentina, where there'll be a presentation to spur the same type of investment in her area.
Oh, I
That's
was
what I
thinking
think.
I'd bring him out to Southeast Alaska, take him moose hunting. But yes,
There you go.
we got very creative in our funding
Yeah.
sourcing.
But definitely that type of stuff, something like that. Hi, everybody.
That'd be fun.
I
So how was that? Hold up a finger, scale of 1 to 5. 5, yeah, I got it, and I got a lot done, and 1 being I'm still really confused. Quick poll. I know we can do polls and Zooms, but 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3. All right, that's not too bad. That's good. Aaron was talking to me earlier today about reminding you that, this is not so easy stuff. It's a form of technical writing, and there's a reason why grant writers get paid a lot, because it's a form of technical writing. And again, you're doing this work in the beginning is going to help making writing those grants a lot easier. So we wanted to find out if there's anybody who is willing to share something, either the outline and talk us through it, or to read through the draft that you have, or even a paragraph of the draft that you have, and just share with us and see what the comments are. Anybody, any brave?
And in some cases, because I was in a group, it may have been just further definition of what it is that you're going to go after. So even if you didn't write anything, you thought about it, that's okay too.
Yeah. Any brave souls out there? The good news is you get to throw it to us for feedback, so that when it goes to the funder, you've had the feedback and have incorporated it. Even though it's a little scary in the moment.
Tracy and Margaret mulling it over.
I know. Margaret, you do yours. Yours is better.
Well, I don't, the wording isn't, no, it's not better, but I don't have the wording
It's a
that
better topic.
Well, so do you want, I'm not comfortable sharing the actual words, but
Well, give us your
at this
elevator
point.
pitch then.
So the elevator pitch still is evolving a little bit, but basically we have a time-honored tradition along the Pacific coast of growing shellfish, mussels, clams, oysters, and for nearly 100 years, or over 100 years, we've nourished coastal communities, even fueling the gold rush in 1890. Today, most shellfish is consumed within 50 miles of the coast, and I have a paper that's about to be published in that, not me, but there is one. Making the problem worse, a large portion of shellfish available for inland markets is sold frozen from foreign sources. Shellfish farms have met the local demand, but until markets are expanded, growers are competing with each other for a stagnant market, and someone's going to lose and farms will close. So expanding markets to reach consumers in landlocked markets is essential to support the industry, the West Coast, but it's also scalable to include the East and Gulf Coasts, and also brings a healthy protein to consumers. What I don't yet have in there, although it's a bullet, is, you know, how shellfish is a net positive protein. It grows in the cleanest environment. It provides habitat, cleans water. It doesn't use inputs like fertilizer. I have also information about compared to other protein sources that further justify or prove the net positive nature in terms of how much input goes into pork and chicken versus shellfish. And the idea is to create sort of a month-long program for a community or set of or city in the Midwest that goes everything from providing a fun beer, wine, oyster, or shellfish event to working with restaurants for a month, providing them with product to experiment using along with recipe cards in their restaurant to build clientele, to show up at college football game tailgates to introduce the concept of eating fresh shellfish to a variety of consumers, providing the education for chefs, providing education for markets
I'm going
and
to stop you,
consumers.
Margaret. I'm going to stop you
Yep.
on the solution.
Because I don't want to get too far into it. Right.
Yeah, but that's okay. I love the thought process, so that's great. But I just want to get people to give you feedback. What resonated with you? What was clearest? What resonated with you about the problem that Margaret shared with us?
Being able to market seafood in places where consumers have never even had it.
Mm-hmm.
To reach, you know, these communities where, say, like, you know, North Dakota, they probably never had a fresh scallop or an oyster or a mussel.
Right.
I thought also the net positive of the shellfish, I thought she did a great job of describing like why it is such a fantastic protein to and market to develop
Right.
because of the environmental benefits as well.
I agree. I thought that was a strong element of it. What else?
I like specific language that she used, like time-honored tradition, or you said something about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but like nourishing the coast or something that's very I don't know what the emotive, I think is a word we've been using, language that I really enjoyed listening to.
Anybody else?
For me, it's harder for me to give feedback when I don't see it in writing because when I'm
know.
listening, and so it's not your fault. I just take away some specific key points. But um, from what you shared, I felt that I was getting very educated on the marine life and understanding it, but I didn't I had to bring up the elements of a statement of need. And I was thinking about the demographic or the community to be served or that is facing a problem. And I feel like I didn't get many takeaways from that. And so that was something I was sitting with was like, okay, but who's in trouble here? And why are they in trouble? And I could infer that from you talking about all the benefits of like the nutritional, yeah, socioeconomic. But for me, it would have been good to, I guess, directly center in on the community to be served, whereas a lot of the phrasing was focusing on the marine life as opposed to the people.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
the
I struggle with that. Like who really is the community? Is it the community of farmers or is it the community where these farmers, you know, where these farmers exist?
Depends on
And
the
so I'm
funder.
Well,
Yeah, I guess.
the farmers, you know, and I've written some grants and helped to write some grants for this type of thing, and the very easy to get data on the economic multiplier of businesses, of small businesses, and how they sustain and support broader communities. So that's just something. It's such a well-known economic principle. And so when these farms go out of business as a small business, it has a multiplier effect. And when these farmers thrive as a business, it has a multiplier effect in their communities, which to me relates to something else I heard, which I don't want to sound like a xenophobe, but you also mentioned the oysters that are eaten inland often come from foreign places. So some statistics about that and how supporting American businesses is both a better product, better for our environment, and supports the American economy. So that's a little bit more statistics around these things, and but your case was made, right? I mean, and then and when you did start going into the solution, it made sense. Okay, I see where she's going.
Okay,
So that was
this
an
is really
example.
helpful. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's surprising, but thank you all for your input. I appreciate it. And more work to do.
Yes. So again, we're going to wrap up, but thank you for working on that. We know, I heard two great things that two people said to me. I'm writing a statement of need right now for a grant. So this is great timing. Like if you're working on a grant right now, awesome. And this is stuff that can be incorporated. I did a bad job of introducing the resources, but you can go back to the lesson plans and to your LMS and find those resources so you can have examples and or just refreshers, and begin writing these statements of need. And again, we would like a statement of need draft. It does not have to be the final product, and your list of outcomes related to it done on Monday. And on Monday, there'll be opportunities to get feedback from each other and from coaches around that. We're going to spend some time because we want to get a good draft wrapped up by next week so we can move on to the rest of the program design. So we just, from Kat, we're finishing up. Any last questions? And then we're going to move to our outcomes, which is your survey.
Yes,
Any last quick questions?
quick question related to the difference between statement of need and the problem statement. Like statement of need will be a little bit more focused on the solution, on the gap that we need to address in order to tackle the problem. You know, like it basically interchangeably also used. Maybe it's the statement of needs. No, not
The way we're
necessarily.
defining it is a statement of need is anywhere from 2 to 5 paragraphs, depending on a funder. That is your description of the need that your community is facing. It's a broader thing that incorporates evidence, stories, all those things we were talking about today. A problem statement is a 1 to 2 sentence synthesis of that statement of need that you can just use in your elevator pitch or your logic model to get everybody oriented in the beginning. And that definition of problem statement is right there, a concise statement summarizing the problem which the proposed project is intended to address. So it's kind of a summary of your statement of need, which is a much more in-depth description of it all. That's how we're defining it, and that's how we're going to try to be very careful of using that terminology in that way.
So
But
quick
thank you for
announcement.
asking.
You guys are, sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
Nope, go ahead.
Quick announcement while you guys are filling out the survey. You have all been matched with your coaches, except for Katie. Katie, you'll be matched today. Your
I was
coach
wondering.
yeah, I knew she wasn't feeling so good this week. I just spoke to her. So respond to your coach as soon as you can. Set up that initial meeting to do the organizational assessment. If I share with you a link for the organizational assessment. You don't have to fill anything out, which is why the one I share with you is view only. You only have to be familiar with some of the questions so you know what you're going to be talking about. And the sooner you get with your coach, the sooner they can start helping you with any of the stuff in training and any of the grants you're working on, et cetera.
If for clarification, is that organizational assessment with our coach should be done just with those of us directly in the cohort, or should we be incorporating our team members as well?
That is for the first interview. The first meeting will probably just be with you and the coach. And then
Perfect.
subsequent to that, so they can get to know you, we want you to involve other people in that as well, in your organization.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right. Well, good luck for those of you who have, like Dave, who have grants due on Friday.
Ew, yikes.
And thank you in advance for filling out the evaluation. We do look at them to try to improve all the time, and that's the other piece to it. And so we appreciate your feedback. And thank you for your efforts.